So again, welcome, guys. Thanks a lot for showing up. Appreciate it. Thanks everybody for coming in, and we're gonna kick it off today. What? That one didn't work. That one didn't work. Hold on, somebody's communicating with me. That one worked. Yeah, it did. That one still didn't work. Ah, works for me. Okay. I'm just sending out the Zoom number. All right. So let's see. Let's go and open our question page. I think I have it open here. I do not. Oh, yes, I do. Nope, I sure don't. I'll just open this question page right here. And there we go. So yesterday, let's just do a quick review. Talked about getting echoes on vocals. Not that hard, depending on what you want to do. We're going to throw the echo plugin on a auxiliary track and then route a bus using a send, so we can get a copy of the signal over to that auxiliary track and feed it with a little bit or a lot of bit of the signal and then blend in the echo. How do we get automation to work with a controller? Well, we did a little bit of that yesterday. I actually downloaded the driver and tried it again, and it still wasn't working to perfection. So maybe there's an updated thing I have to do with Logic Pro. We'll see. I'll keep plugging away at that and show you that later. But we did show you a little bit of how a controller in real time with automation in write mode, touch mode, or latch mode can actually make changes in real time. And then we also talked about how to create controller assignments. So Command L actually got us the controller assignment, and then we can go ahead and tell it which parameter we want to choose, and then what the input message is from the controller, and then we can assign um, that part of the controller to the automation of that part of a plugin. So that was yesterday. Multipressors we talked about being four separate compressors, the multipressor plugin, but multipressors in general work in very specific ranges of frequencies to compress that range. Type of plugin can we use for rock or metal vocals? Well, we discussed a lot of different things from, obvious EQ and compression on your vocal tracks, to things like harmonics, um, other higher end compressors, distortion, duplicating, and then directional mixing we did with our little uh, pitch thing we did last week. So that was fun. How does too much compression affect vocals? Well, it should be affect, by the way. That's the way it works. And the answer there is, it does present a little bit of loudness, so you'll have to rebalance out the equation using the plugin, but it also then can add what we call a sense of air, like breath, and also some edginess, almost to the brink of distortion. So depending on what you're looking for, a compressor could actually get you there, depending on how you manipulate the parameters. We also talked about why should you add an EQ first, but don't do anything with it. We said it's a very low grade plugin that doesn't require a lot of processing. So you might as well throw it on there. Whether you use it or not, it's up to you. But most of the time, I am making small little tweaks just to perfect the recording. Even though I have really great recordings, that doesn't mean they're perfect every time. Um, I think that was it, right? We did a bunch of those. So I see a bunch of stuff with vocal chain harmonies and pitch correction and flex pitch. So we're going to address those today. Let's jump into some of these guys here. We'll start with number 6, and we're going to kind of briefly talk about the mastering chain at one point this week, but then we are going to get into mastering next week. So we'll deal with Pro Tools and Logic next week in regards to mastering a track. And I have a lot of projects here that I've mastered, so you can kind of see the difference between a mastered versus an unmastered track. And you can see how my signal chain that I produced in the master track can help create that final mix. So let's just say for now, um, when mastering, comma, do you send a mastered file or a raw mix? Well, I think the answer right there is when mastering. So if I'm already mastering, I have the mastered file. If I haven't had the track mastered yet, if I'm sending it out to get mastered, then I would send them, I wouldn't say a raw mix. A raw mix is not the word I would use to describe the final thing that I'm going to send off for mastering. Um, for instance, I did some mastering for a local artist in the last few weeks. I don't know if I still have it here. No, I probably archived it already. Nope, it's not in here. Um, but I am working on another project with that local artist. We jumped into that. Um, I'm going to close that for a second. Yeah, I'll save it for a second. Where I'm going to be kind of taking pieces and parts, and we're actually together covering a song. And right now, all I have is the initial drum track, which sounds like this. So you see that the waveforms on this are crazy loud, which is awesome. But it's not overpowered, it's not distorted, it's not shooting out ridiculous amounts of signal. Um, the actual cover song I've matched up to it just so I get an idea. So this is what it sounds like. So that's kind of what we're working on. So as I get the pieces built little by little here, from drums to guitar and some violins and then multiple vocal tracks, what I'm doing along the way to prepare myself for mastering is I'm making sure that each track itself, volume wise, is good. You can see in my project, along with this other person's project we're collaborating on. So we're both using the same project file. Um, that none of the faders are really pushed up past zero, as you can see. So what we're looking for at the very back end here is that this master track doesn't really exceed. Now, here's where it gets a little crazy because things are different in Logic. It doesn't exceed 5.8, positive 5.8, not -3, -6, -9. I always say -6 to 0 is the sweet spot. Yeah, on the input side. But on the output side of this program, 5.8 is really your ceiling. You're really not going anywhere past that. So if we look at what volume's being generated by the drum track here, so that particular sound is only reaching 0. Now, typically in like Pro Tools, what you would have is the concept that 0 would probably be right on the edge of distortion. And in this case, it's not. It's about positive 5.8. So there's the first thing you got to understand, that when I'm sending a signal out, I want to leave a little room for either more instrumentation or more volume to be added in. The mastering engineer's main job here is to eventually get this track to be as loud as it can without distortion, without having these signals blend and mess each other up and interfere with each other, and basically make it, radio ready or stream ready. So when someone puts in the car, it's not lower in volume than other tracks that they could be playing from a playlist. You're playing a playlist from 15 different artists, the volume should be pretty consistent, especially if it's, more recent releases. If you go back to the 60s, 70s, and 80s, their releases aren't as loud as today's releases because technology has improved and because the standards and quality of radios and MP3 players and headphones and stuff like that all has increased tremendously. So we want to make sure that all of the steps that you're taking along the way produce, again, a great mix for the audience. They don't want to have to turn the volume up on their MP3 player because the song you released is much lower than other songs that are out there. So just always thinking in mind of the end result. How is the audience experiencing this? How are they going? Is it a big deal that somebody turns it up? No, probably not. But it does speak to something like, hey, why does blah, blah, blah's songs always sound lower than other songs? Well, it attributed to the engineer who originally recorded it, and then again, the engineer who mastered it. So what I'm doing in my projects for quote unquote mastering is I'm getting them to a point, but not to the end point. I'm getting them as close as I can where the mix sounds great, and then I'm handing it off to another person who can take it to the next level with some very basic things. And why do I give it to another person? Well, I'm giving it to another person because that person has fresh ears, has not heard this and spent time with this and listened to each track being recorded and listened to the mix 15 times. They have a fresh set of ears. They're ready to take this to the next level. A lot of times, engineers basically exhaust all their ideas and thoughts before things can ever get to where they need to be. So that's just a general answer to this right now. What am I doing? Well, when I'm mastering, I'm trying to get them to a mastered file. But when I'm creating a mix and I'm about to send it out to mastering, I want to give them not a raw mix, but as polished of a mix that I possibly can. Something that is, at good levels, no interference, reaching, close to 5.8, but definitely not getting all the way up there. I want to leave some room for the mastering engineer to work. If you give them 2 decibels to work with, you're not going to see a big change. They're not going to have the ability to make big changes. But if you give them something around a 0, they have now 5 decibels to work with where they can pull up areas of the mix, mids, highs, lows, whatever it is, to get to that final signal. So that's really, in general what I'm doing in regards to sending files. If I'm sending a mastered file to go for distribution, yeah, I want a mastered file. But if I'm going to the mastering engineer, again, I'm not sending a raw mix. I'm sending a very polished mix. I call it like a pre-master almost. And I do a lot of pre-masters when I'm doing demos or doing scratch tracks. I'll take the time to kind of put a little bit of mastering ideas in there, but I'll always leave room for the next stage because there's always room for improvement with a lot of the mixes. All right. So let's cross that one off or highlight it like I've been doing. And let's talk a little bit about number 7. This is a very interesting question, and I think I've already answered it multiple times along the way. But does order matter when applying plugins in a channel strip? And the answer is, oh, hell yeah, it sure does. Let's go over to our mastering channel strip for a moment. I'm sorry, not mastering. I don't want to say master. Just go up to any one of our channel strips. Let's throw, well, no, this project probably isn't a good project to do. Let's get out of this, and then let's open up our test because that's the one I want to work with because we built so much in this. There we go. All right, so let's take a look at our vocal track, the one we're highlighted on, and let's take a look at our lineup here. All right, and I'm going to actually take these off for right now because these are not part of what I'm looking to do. So you could see in my channel strip lineup, I have my EQ first, which is what I always recommend. And then I have my compressor. And then I have my pitch shifter, which is keeping my notes in line with the rest. So like, for instance, this is what it sounds like. Okay, so that is my order. I'm EQing first. The signal's going through the EQ. Then it's coming out of the EQ into the compressor. Then the compressor is doing its magic. And then it's going into my pitch shifter, which is taking an EQ'd compressed signal and pitch shifting it. After all 3 of these, it's then going out. A copy's going out to a bus for reverb and another bus for delay or more reverb or whatever it is, 2 separate reverb signals. Maybe one is long and one is short, whatever you want to call it. So how is the order really, designed? So let's think of it in just simple terms and knowing what we know about a channel EQ. A channel EQ is a boost in a cut of frequencies between 20 hertz and 20 kilohertz. So if I were to boost 2K, right, and give it a good solid boost, I'm adding volume into the signal. Once the signal has gone through the EQ, it then goes into the compressor. So think about that. I added volume at the EQ, and then the compressor goes to work. So the settings you put in the compressor are going to be dictating how you handled that boost at 2K back in the EQ, right? If I boost or cut in the EQ, the compressor is going to react differently, much differently than it would in the opposite direction. So for instance, let's switch them. Let's just mess around with this for a second. Let's there we go. And all I did was just kind of click on it and they switch positions, right? Just to show you. So the comp is going to come first. then the channel EQ, and then the pitch corrector. So let's talk about what the signal goes through here. The original signal, the recorded signal, goes through the compressor. It gets squashed, reduced, thresholds get pulled back. We're basically reducing the dynamic range. But then what we're doing after that is boosting 2K with nothing else after that to adjust it. So it's been compromised here at the compressor, and then the channel EQ takes that compressed signal and boosts it again at 2K. Well, how do I control what happened here? Maybe this is a big change. Maybe something happens here that, really stands out. I don't know what it is. We didn't play it back to listen to it. It does. Think about just the basic principles of what happens in an EQ and a compressor. So I want you to really analyze that for a moment. If I boost the 2K, I can use a compressor to control it. If I compress it first and then boost the 2K, there's nothing after it to control it. And the answer is no, I wouldn't put a second compressor after it. Why would I do that? When all I really have to do is just switch positions, channel EQ, and then compressor, right? A compressor's job is to reduce dynamic range. An EQ's job is to kind of make little boosts and cuts in the frequencies to get it to sound better. I mean, take what was done here at the low end. I made a huge cut at around 60 decibels, right? That's a big cut. Now, if I made that cut, but then I used the compressor to rebalance the equation, if I switch these, the compressor would work its magic, and then I get a cut that I can't recoup. Not that I'm going to take the compressor to recoup that, but it could have some effect on the signal. It could and will have some direct result when I play it back. I could play this back for you. You probably won't hear the difference through the microphone that's coming out of the speakers of my laptop, but let's do it anyway. Let's do it. Hold on. I'm going to put it right now down to here is EQ and compressor. All right. And then I'll switch positions and play it again. Here it is, EQ and compressor. Okay. So now let's switch positions. So again, you may not hear a huge difference through my microphone, but I hear very simply through, laptop speakers can hear a difference of what's going on. I can hear that the 2K is boosted without any control. It's left to run wild. And that definitely has a change in the signal. Now, listen, I'm not saying it's a bad change. I'm not saying it's an unwanted change, but it's definitely not the same as it was when I had it the other way. So again, here's the EQ and the compressor. You know what? I'll make it a little more stark so maybe you can hear it through the mic. Let's really broaden out this range a little bit. And that way, wow, it's going to sound a little loud. But let's see what happens. So this is the first one with EQ, then compressor. Also, I want you to notice the purple bar. That's the compressor working overtime. Here it is. That's the compressor. And again, I'll play it again. It's right here in this bar. And it's really working hard to compress the signal. Let's switch positions and see what happens. I have a compressor, then an EQ. Now, the signal change was definitely different here, but now you can physically see that this purple bar, the compressor, wasn't working as hard to control the signal because the boost came after the compressor in the signal chain. So I'm just trying to make it so you can actually hear the differences, but you can actually see the differences. Again, let me go back to that. Compressor, then EQ, and then there we go. There's the boost. And now watch the purple bar when the compressor works first. It's only reaching right around here, right? Right here, right by the second T in setting. Let's switch it again and see where the compressor goes. I'll put my mouse right on it so you can see the difference. And it made a little more crossover in that T area where setting is. It's going beyond my mouse now. Look how much it's going beyond my mouse. Yeah, it's traveling well beyond my mouse. Again, with the compressor coming first, it won't travel beyond my mouse. See? And now I switch it back again and put the mouse back where it was. Whoops. And there we go, right there. And you can see it's crossing over. So there's definitely something different happening when I change up the order. When the channel EQ is first, the boosts and cuts are going through the compressor. When I put the compressor first, the boosts and cuts in EQ are not going through the compressor, which means they're not being controlled. So things are happening. Different things are going to be a result. And here, sitting here in front of my speakers, you can hear a solid difference. If anybody has any piece of software, even if you did Audacity and had signal chain plugins, Pro Tools or Logic free trials that are out there still, 90-day free trials of both of those softwares. If you have a laptop, not a Chromebook and not a phone, but if you have any laptop, Mac or PC, you can get Pro Tools for free for 90 days. If you have a Mac already somewhere in the house, go download Logic free for 90 days and play around. A lot of the plugins that we're using come with Logic. Just throwing that out there again if anyone missed it weeks ago when I told you about it. So here's the deal. Does the order of plugins matter? Oh, yeah, it certainly does. It has a direct effect on the final signal. And as you can see, it actually changes the way the plugins work. The one that's easiest to see, obviously, is the compressor because we can actually see the compressor result in that purple bar, that compressor bar there. All right. Let's go on to number 8. So sunny. Kid show. All right. Do you switch up the vocal chain when recording harmonies? Ooh, or keep the same as the lead vocals? Well, we did this already. So let's do this. So this was my harmony track that we put in here. All right. I duplicated the track and I added a pitch corrector at a different, I added a vocal transformer, which kind of pitched down things. And I don't want to do that. Let's take off these for a moment. And let's just talk about these two together. So these two plugins, these two tracks have the exact same plugin lineup. They both have channel EQ, compressor, and pitch corrector. And so this is what it sounds like. And again, this one's popping because we don't have that fade. Those fades that we created yesterday, they're just so smooth, silky smooth. See, it comes right in. It's awesome. But when you don't have a fade, you get that pop sound. I hate that. Anyway, so these are exact same signal, right? So what I'm going to do, and let's be smart about this, let's add something else because I wouldn't just leave this. Why would I have two of the exact same things in phase? All it's going to do is just add volume that at times you can't control. So we might as well add something to the backups. And in this case, we could change pitch. We can pitch down or up. And I don't know if we can do a full pitch down. We could try. Let's see what that does. No. Detuning it really makes it sound, right? So that's a little better. So it kind of gives that doubling effect almost. But then we can add, and what we went through is things like Chorus, which is a great little plugin that kind of allows you some different sounding signals. Adding number of people into the signal here. A mega wide chorus really draws it out, and here's what that sounds like. So as much as I'm kind of doubling up on the signal, I'm doing enough to the second signal to make it different. And that's the key here is, yeah, I don't like doubling up signals like that unless you're going to do some major changes to the second signal, which is what I'm doing. I'm making big changes. I shifted it off half a cent in regards to its tune. I added a chorus. What was the other thing we used the other day? We used a different, no, we used a directional mixer, but we could try that again. Let's see if we pull that out way out. And that has some effect. It really spreads it out hard left and right of the speakers. Very, very, very stereo-esque. We did talk about maybe adding an ensemble, which then adds a second, third voice to all of this. Doubler is the one I would go with personally. I always look for a doubler. And then that kind of adds a next level feeling to the signal. I saw someone pop a hand up. Wawa, did you have a question? Yeah, buddy, what's up?
Okay, so for the last thing we talk about the EQ.
Hmm.
For example, when you have like um a delay effect or reverb,
Hmm.
is it okay like in the bus if you put like a linear EQ to crop out like the high end and the low end to make it sound less bouncy? If
I see what you're saying. The you're saying EQ have anything to do with that?
no, like when you put like a reverb or a delay on a bus,
Right.
like is it okay if you put like um EQ under the delay or the reverb
Nah, I mean, I don't
setting
know.
to
You could, yeah, absolutely. In a single chain in your mixer. Let's go through this. Thanks for the question. Good question. Let's go down over here to my buses, right? My effects buses, and the ones that were created for me are right here, and you can see what they did. They put a channel EQ in there after the fact. So when you have a space designer that you're creating some sort of reverb effect in after the bus, um, the software does recommend you put a channel EQ, but none of the EQs are actually touched here. What they're doing for that is we call it kind of a utility EQ. At that point, if you find that the reverb took on a bunch of properties based upon the preset that you used or the settings that you did, and there's too much mid, high, or low frequencies in that reverb signal, then you can go in and adjust them. You want a little more, you want a little less, that would be the reason why you would have an EQ after a reverb plugin or a delay plugin or anything like that. It's always about control, right? So I always say that I want to control what the reverb signal sounds like. So to do that, I would probably put an EQ after that. Do I need a compressor? No, because the compressor work should have been done over here. So I don't need to compress the reverb signal. What I do need to do though is control after the signal's bounced around the space and it's come back, what does it sound like? Is it good? Is it bad? Can I make it a little different? Can I change it up? Or do I need to do that at all? If you don't need to do that, then you don't have to add an EQ. Or you can eliminate the EQs the software put in there for you. Um, but they're there, and like you said, like I said, they're unused at this point. There's none of them have any signal changes made post reverb. Personally, I don't mind this. It's the software that's doing it for me. I didn't do that. My man-made ones, the space designer and delay ones, you can tell the ones I make are like this green, dark forest green looking army green thing. The ones that they make are the brighter green, so you could tell the difference between mine and the computers. And when the computer makes it, they put an EQ after. In my personal ones, I really don't, because a lot of the EQ I'm using over here on the original track and a lot of the settings for like this still can be adjusted. So, for instance, over here in the filter part of the envelope for this space designer, I do have frequencies that I can adjust here as well. So, I would probably end up doing my adjustments in the plugin, but you don't have to. You can actually go in and use a traditional EQ to make those changes and to, um, clean up what you're looking to clean up, the clean signal versus the reverb signal. And on the reverb signal, I want to drop the lows. You can do that using an EQ. So, do I switch up the vocal chains from recording harmonies? I don't. I'm sure you can benefit by doing that, because, for instance, on my vocal track here, I have, like I said, a bunch of different plugins after the standard EQ and compression. My original main vocal track is here, which is just EQ, switch these back up, EQ, compression, and pitch control. Then my backup actually then added chorus, direct mixer, and an ensemble, which kind of varied things a little bit, helped me out. So do I switch up the vocal chain? Not the core, not the EQ compressor, no. But what I do is for the rest of the stuff, I would definitely add additional things for harmonies, backup vocals. Um, so the answer is I would keep the core the same as the lead vocals, but I would switch up the backtracking, the doubling, and all that enough so it blends well. It's all about the blend between your main vocals so they still stand out, and then the backing tracks are harmonies so they can kind of have their own space to live. Should you always use pitch correction? The hard answer for that one is no. You should not always use pitch correction. If it's you and you are not a paid entertainer who has a beautiful voice and has won awards, then yes, you should use pitch corrector. But if you are recording someone who has a gorgeous voice and has, a very naturally gifted talent, then no, don't use pitch correction. So then that translates to, well, if they can't sing, you have to use pitch correction. No, not necessarily. Sometimes people that can't sing actually sound not bad. That's kind of weird thing to say. But let's take into account that a lot of the artists out there today have pitch correction because they may or may not be that good. And how can you tell? Get them into a live situation, sit them down in a room, give them a guitar, give them a piano, and let's hear their natural voice. I want to hear how they sound without any processing whatsoever, just their voice in a space. If it's really that bad, then they've relied heavily on post-production effects to get them to where they are. If they sit down and they blow you away, then why would you use pitch correction? Their whole point of their aura and their whole point of their, appeal is going to be that natural sound. That could be a very soft and breathy sound. That could be a very hard and edgy sound. Whatever it is what got them to where they are. They shouldn't be relying on post-production. Now, do engineers go behind artists' back and add little bits of pitch correction here and there? Absolutely. Yep. I firmly believe that. I've never sat in on a session where the engineers turn to me and goes, I'm going to add it without them knowing. No, that's never happened. But what has happened definitely is they just in the back room late night after everyone's gone, go through and just make little corrections here and there. That I've seen done. I have seen that done without even being spoken. I know what's going on. I have seen it done. Or if you have someone that comes into a studio and they think they can sing and their parents say they're awesome and put their A on the fridge every day, then there might be a problem. And you'll have to have that conversation. Like, listen, you sound a little off today. Do you mind if we just put some post-production processing on there so we don't have to keep recording take after take, time after time? Some of them would appreciate that. Other people would be offended. A lot of times it'll become an inspiration for them to try harder, to practice more, to be better at their craft. So these are honest things you need to discuss with your artist probably going into a recording session. Have you ever used pitch correction? And if you haven't, I need to hear your voice naturally so I know how to work with it. And these are just honest conversations you have with people. It's person to person. It's not trying to get the best of somebody or try to be better than somebody. It's about being honest and open so you can have a good working relationship with this artist. That artist needs to feel as comfortable as possible. Whatever that means, they need to feel as comfortable as possible working with you in order for this quote unquote collaboration that's going on during the recording process to happen perfectly. And believe it or not, these are big communication skills. These are big socialization skills, things you need to work on as a person as you're growing up, how to talk to people, how to read people, how to understand what they want, even though they may not be saying it. There's actually a little bit of psychology involved. Yes, absolutely. To try to get a good read on somebody, to try to figure out what exactly it is they want is the reason why some engineers are really good at what they do. Establishing relationships, talking off take and laughing and making them feel comfortable. These are big things that engineers do. They become recording engineer and psychologist in the room, or psychiatrist. So should you always use pitch correction? No, like I said, you should not always use it. But if you have to use it, let me show you how I can use it. And we've used it already on this. This is my vocal track. I've put my pitch corrector on there. You know what we did? We found out what the scale was for this particular MIDI performance, which was just a bunch of strings, right here. So this is the performance right there. What'd be interesting to see is how that would work down here with the rest of it, right? I don't know why it's not. Click over. There we go. Wow, that sounds like garbage. So maybe we could do it over here. So we can move it over to kind of, so was it in on the third note, let's say? So almost right at the beginning of that third note. So let's make a copy of this, Command C. And now let's bring it down here where these are. Position my cursor right around where that third note happened. And we'll just do a Command V. And let's hear it over here with the rest of the instrumentation. That sounds pretty cool. I mean, it probably could be a little better. So right at that point here is where I want that bend to happen. So we can just shift it just a little bit over. Let's see. That's better. So that fits a little better, right? So we'll work with this part. And so like you said, I use pitch corrector here, putting ourselves in the scale of C major, which is what my piano is in, what my violins are in. And how do we find that out? Well, we quickly looked at the keys and the notes that are being played. So that's a D, and that's a E. No, I'm sorry, that was an G, D, and C. So that's a C major chord. Just so for people that don't know scales, you can always look that up. You can always have the computer decide that. And you could see down here that we can actually keep ourselves into C major if we wanted to. A scale quantize. That's another thing we kind of briefly, breezed by when we did the piano roll window, but that also does exist. So, these are just things that you can use as a non-musician to kind of figure out what things are to get your bearings, or I'm just adjusting those notes really quick, to kind of understand larger musical concepts without actually being a musician. So like I said, this was a C major scale simply by looking at the notes. I threw it into a Google search and found out what the scale was. And then I applied that scale to my vocal track. And that was what got us to that point. Now, let's hear the awfulness that is my vocal track, purposely, by the way, but my vocal track without pitch correction. Right? That's pretty awful. That is pretty awful. So, again, leading into the recording session, I'm saying to myself, can this person sing or can they? Or can't they? Do I need to do some post production? Do they think they sound good, or do they know they don't sound good, or are they honest about what they can do? And then you can make the decision from there. My decision here is, I need pitch correction. So let's put that pitch correction on. We put it into its chord progression, its scale, and then we got this result. All right, and that was pretty good. I don't mind that at all, and it kind of blends well with the piano and whatnot. But there was another way that we can attack pitch. Now, while I had the question about using, other softwares, and we talked a little bit about using Melodyne or Nectar, but one of the key features that Logic implemented inside of Logic is flex pitch. We know about what flex time can do. We can adjust, we can compress, we can expand without changing time or with changing time. It can analyze it, we can slice it up, we can adjust little bits and pieces within it. That was what all flex time had done for us, which is awesome. But flex pitch gives us this next level element, and it incorporates the same ideas that Melodyne and iZotope Nectar can do. Now, I'm going to take the pitch correction off, which means I'm just going to deactivate it over here in the signal chain. And it sounds god-awful, right? But so we're going to activate flex time, the flex here. And then we're going to go in here, and you can see all of our old flex time markers. But what we didn't go over is flex pitch. Ooh, so I'm going to go ahead and activate flex pitch. So now let's take a look at what it does. It actually analyzes my audio and it drops these little bars on there showing you the key that it's in. So this particular key right here is, I think it's C minor, which is basically a B. So I did this in a B. And if I wanted to change that, I would have to push it up to the C. And you can hear that as I grab it, it's actually making the flex pitch. Here, I'll move my mic so you can hear it. This is where it was. Here it is again. Not great, right? So what we're going to do is make adjustments to this to put it back in pitch. I'm going to drag this bar out so it hits the first note, and then I'm going to pitch it up the way it should be. So that's the note I should have hit. Let's take this back bar, move it so it covers all of the signal. We can pull this back a little more. Okay, so now let's listen to it with my new flex pitching. So flex pitch actually does sound a little more natural. I don't know if you can hear the difference between flex pitch and pitch corrector, but it's very good. It's not so robotic and clamped down on each note, so it sounds very T-Painy. Flex pitch sounds a little more natural. I'll play it again so you can hear it. You can hear that there's not as much bending going on. That blue, blue. It's more natural up. It has a little bit of air into it as I go from note to note. It actually adds a little more character into the performance. And see, I would recommend flex pitch over using pitch corrector because they have two separate results. One sounds like a robot, and another one sounds more natural. So again, if you want to be slick about it as an engineer and go back and fix people's really bad performances, I would go flex pitch so they don't hear that bending and shaping of notes like T-Pain effect does. This is more of a natural change to the signal. So let's take a look again at what this is all is. So once I grab this, it's basically reading the note. It analyzed the audio. It said this was your C. From point A to point B was a C. And then I believe then this was a, what did I say it was? It was a C, I think it was D. Yeah, so C sharp. Yeah, maybe it's a D sharp, but probably a D. And then G would be way up there. And we can actually change this much more. And then it goes back down to C, by the way. But you'll notice that there's little dots here, and that's interesting. So if you go up to the top here of the dots, you're going to see these fine pitches where you can actually kind of smooth it out even more. Again, make it a little more robotic. Pull it down a little bit. Pull it up a little bit. You know, that's kind of cool. The other thing is down here below, we have the vibrato. You can actually smooth out. So what is vibrato? That is the ooh. It's very Eli-esque, right? Ooh. You can actually smooth that out. So it's just ooh. So I can actually take that and smooth out. You can see, now I'll increase the size here. This is as wide as I can get it. Wait, no, let's do this. Let's really make it big here so you can see. So you see, like within this, is it D? I don't know. It looks like it's a D. But in this, you can see that there's a lot of up and downs within that. So I can go in and again, change this a little bit, fine tune this to really pull it up. There we go. And then smooth out the vibrato. So it's a flat line across. Here's what that sounds like. Right? And then you can also fine tune it with formant shifts and the drift between notes. So I can adjust that drift. See what that sounds like. So you actually can make adjustments in that and really pull it back down, pull it back up. So like it sounds like a ooh going up and down. That's what these little guys do. They actually are adjusting the curvature of each of these notes. So again, this has a bunch of vibrato, and plus I'm a little out of key here. So let's pull that up a little more. There we go. And then I'm going to take the vibrato and smooth it all out until it becomes almost like a straight line. All right. Fine tune pitching. Here we go. Doesn't that sound so much more natural than the pitch corrector did? The answer is yes. The answer is yes. It sounds a lot more natural than it did. Let's take a look at this last one here. Let's zoom in. And let's smooth out the vibrato here. You can see there's a bunch of movement within the note, but I want it to be a little smoother. So I'll just flatten it out a little bit like that. And you can see, look how nice that is. It's nice, smooth up, and then right back down. Let's see how smooth it sounds naturally. I sound pretty good. Isn't that amazing? Amazing. So it's really just, your ability to manipulate parts of this back and forth. Wawa guy, what's up? Wawa loves flex pitch, by the way.
Yeah, for a longer project, like for us, we have a long track or something that's really long. You don't have time to like edit them one by one. Couldn't you highlight them
Wawa,
and
you
then
should edit them one by one. You should take the time. There's no such thing as I don't have the time. Don't be lazy. You have the
okay,
time. Go note by note. Fix it all if you have to. But you're asking, is there a
okay,
better way to do it all in one shot?
yeah.
In some softwares, yes. In Nectar, I don't believe there's like a total control
No,
thing.
cause in Logic, like
Yeah.
sometimes I can one of the node and then Control A, and then go to little side like node that have a little 100% up to 100%, where like if you
Yeah, but
move it, whatever.
would you want all the notes to be at 100%?
No, like, but you move it relatively to what the note was actually to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
So like if the note was lower, it
Right.
move it a little bit, but it doesn't move it all of them to the same level. For example, like if it was like something was 20% and another one was 30%, if you move
Right.
it by 20, the other
Right.
one is gonna be 50 and one is gonna be 40. So it's not
So
like
it's a relative adjustments. So whatever you have clicked on, the adjustments you're making after that are based upon the first one. So
yeah,
then,
that's what
yeah. The unfortunate part about that is, yeah, that's why sometimes overall global changes can be a problem because not every single note here needed the same change. So, like my fine pitch for the first note was -4. This one actually worked out to be the same. What about my vibrato? 12% here, 0% there, and this is 22%. So the vibrato on all three are different. The fine pitch was correct, about 4. But these all, so I can't make global changes to these notes. And this is, like you said, this is not a larger project, for all of the notes over a 3-minute song. That's the big problem. And the answer is, do engineers go in and note by note fix things? Yes, they do. Welcome to the industry of spending a delirious amount of time doing minute changes to perfect the art. What I would do if I were you, to kind of break that up a little bit, is I would take it at, 15 to 20-second intervals. Do your changes, go take a break, walk around, come back, do the next 15 to 20 seconds, or just push your limits, right? Do as long as you can without starting to like see things and hear things, and then take your break. You always should be taking a few minute break every so often just to reset your ears for a lot of different reasons: the volume, the EQ, the mix, for minor changes like this, all of those notes, it all starts to sound the same after a while. So, making global changes can help you start somewhere. I'll answer that question. Sometimes doing a big global change can help the initial process, but then you'll have to go back into it note by note by note by note to make the fine tune adjustments so it's perfect. And that's the goal, to make it perfect. You want to be an engineer. The reason why engineers are so good, the reason why things sound so good in the industry, is because someone took a lot of time and effort to make it that way. It wasn't magic. Maybe once in a while Magic happens, but not every day. It's like scratch offs. Maybe once in a while you get $1. All the other times are losers. So flex pitch gave us a different result, right? It wasn't quite the robotic T-Painy, blendy, blue, blue. It actually is a lot smoother. And you actually have a full amount of control, there goes my word again, over how that actually sounds. Look at that smooth line, that smooth transition from one note to the next, right? That is what kind of makes it a little more natural. Naturally, people would do that can sing well. I personally could not do that. So this is a perfect example of how you can take someone who's mediocre and turn it into something that sounds a lot better without having to have them redo it over and over and over again. That's what you want to avoid. Again, it's all about comfortability, right? How comfortable can an artist be after you keep telling them they have to keep doing it over and over and over again? Not going to feel too comfortable after that, I'll tell you that. Not going to sell a lot of tapes that way. I didn't get my iPad up and running. I do have it down here, but I didn't do it yet. We'll do that another day. We talked about EQ. Should you only use those 3 plugins when creating a master chain? I'm not quite sure I know what 3 plugins you're referring to, but I will talk about mastering chains tomorrow. So we'll get back to that one. I thought you were supposed to record the vocal dry and then put the effect on after the recording. Yes, you should. But, and this comes with a big but, sometimes the artist wants to hear the effect as they're doing it in order to know how that effect is blending in and how they have to control their voice to get to that point. Would I put a pitch corrector on a live recording while they're playing and trying to record? The answer is no. That could screw them up. That would be crazy. Could I put something like an EQ, a compressor on? Yeah, I could do that. I mean, it's not going to make much difference to the recording artist what it sounds like now, because I'm eventually going to change it anyway. But it's all about how an artist or a recording is going and how you want it to sound. So if the artist likes to hear a chorus effect on their vocals while recording, then do it. Sometimes it allows them to be more creative with how they control their voice. Or a guitarist that wants a certain pedal on there. Yeah. Could you record distorted guitar without a distortion pedal? You could. You could record dry signal and then put the pedal on afterwards. But does it feel the same as a guitarist to listen to something clean and try to play leads and bar chords, power chords without the distortion on there? Sometimes you don't get that same effect of the performance. So in some cases, yeah, I would put the plugin on during recording as long as it didn't screw up the artist. And if they requested it, I definitely would put it on because sometimes they know a little better about how they can control their voice and how they're going to get the result that you are looking for. So that ends up being part of the dry or after. So depending on who you're watching and why they're doing it is going to give you the answer to, are you supposed to record dry vocals and then put the effect on afterwards? Sometimes. A lot of times you are going to create dry vocals and then put effects on. But in some cases, you may not. Should you flex the volume using flex pitch? Oh, well, we did flex volume over here, right? It's right here. It's gain. There it is. Can you flex the gain of a flex pitched note? Yeah, you can. You can change that. You want to go up with it a little bit and push it. You can see the waveforms behind it changing. You could do that. I'm not quite sure why. Maybe to make accented moments. Let's hear what it sounds like after I push this 4 decibels up. Do you see how that kind of naturally now comes out as a much louder note and it gives it a different sort of feel that comes way up as opposed to being dropped in the mix? Let's say I drop it. Let's say I just blend it in with the rest. Here's what that sounds like. Besides the pitch, it really doesn't have any, tremendous impact. But when I cranked it up to about +4, here's what it sounds like. A little more of the breath came out, a little more of the characteristics of that high note came out. So it actually, did make a difference in how it was originally performed. So you can use the volume button in flex pitch to create, again, more effect into the signal, to create more of an impact of the song that you're looking to do. So should you flex volume? I don't like using, definites. I like saying, can you use it? Yeah, you can use it. It should be for a very specific purpose, but it could be used. So it's not the end of the world. It's not like you're not allowed to use it. It's not like that at all. Well, let's go through these just really fast, see if there's anything else we doubled up on here. Gain, master, fading, we did simple resolutions, adjust compressors, offline bounce, purposes stacking vocals, mastering flavor, copy the background. All right, so I think that'll be good. Oh wait, how do I auto tune my voice? Well, I just showed you 2 ways you can use pitch controller, which does sound like auto tune, quote unquote, and then you can use flex pitch, which actually sounds a little more natural, but and is able to add more control to your signal. So we'll highlight that one. We've already discussed that. So awesome. That was a good lineup of questions you guys had for some of these. I hope I answered any of those questions you may have had along the way about the difference between pitch corrector and flex pitch. Any questions before we get out of here for today? Go ahead, Vince. What's up, buddy?
Didn't you say there was like that post-production thing that we could do?
The environmental stuff, the
Yeah,
stuff that I could send you and you could work on.
yeah,
Do you have any of the softwares at home?
yeah. I have Logic.
Okay, cool. So yeah, just email me and I'll send you a link to the Dropbox.
Okay.
All right. And then Wawa already sent me some stuff back, and I'm giving my, for people that want to keep their skills up a little bit, I'm going to give you some environments, and I want to see how you're able to kind of create a comprehensive mix from project to project or from track to track. And they're actually very cool recorded signals by professionals around the world. So cool thing to take a look at and see how people are doing things. So just email me, Vince, or anybody else. I put that out there last week. Anybody else that wants, a little audio work, I don't care what you have. You could have Audacity, you could have Pro Tools, you could have Logic, you could have anything you want. I have WAV files. If you want a copy of those WAV files, I wasn't going to send them out to everybody because they're pretty big. A lot of them are like 20 minutes long, but I wanted to see if you wanted to, put any work into kind of mixing and adding effects or adding compression or reducing volume or whatever it is that you need to do or what you think needs to get done for those pieces of audio. Cool. All right. Thanks, guys, for joining us today. Don't forget to hand in all your past work that is due. And we will check you guys back here tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Enjoy the rest of your day, folks. We out.